can we trace cryptocurrency? And then the advertisement said yes. And so I thought, since we gave the answer, nobody would come. But now that I'm very glad to see that there's much more to this and that you all came to see what else other than yes we can provide. And of course, Bitcoin has been in the news lately, as we know. We won't get into that because you all have been reading the news. 7 years ago, believe it or not, Bitcoin was just a scientific experiment. But now it's a reality. And it's a reality, not only that, it's a reality in the area of crime, as we know from our recent experience. And it's interesting, there's even a certain kind of business now called crime as a service, where you pay someone and they will set up a virus and collect ransom for you. And usually the ransom, we've seen in our current situation, we often see cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, being used as a flow for criminal proceeds. The Bitcoin market alone today is estimated to be worth over $30 billion US. And of course, we need the proper tools and training to trace Bitcoin when it's used for illicit purposes. And so today, I'm happy to introduce, and this is a cooperation between 4 parts of the UNODC, so it's a pleasure to introduce everybody and to show how different parts of the UNODC house with different areas of expertise come together and to share their expertise and to move forward on a particular topic. Because the 4 parts of the house that we have here are the Global Program on Money Laundering, our Global Program on Cybercrime, our Criminal Justice Program along the cocaine route, which is known as CrimJust, and also our e-learning program. So we're taking all of this and bringing it together to develop a training that we will use in the CrimJust program and elsewhere, and also developing the e-learning tools. And so it's a really great collaboration, and the type of things that I want to, that I think the executive director wants to encourage more around UNODC. Of course, it wouldn't be possible without funding support from our donors, and in this particular effort, we'd like to thank the donors of being Norway, UK, and the US, who provided the funding for this training. So I don't want to keep you from the excitement and the demonstration that we have here, and I'm going to turn it over now to Neil Walsh, who is the head of our Global Program on Cybercrime, and he will start the discussion and has a little demonstration here. Neil, over to you.
Thank you. Oh, nosy. Ladies and gents, good afternoon. This is being live streamed on Twitter and Facebook, so I'm going to try not to swear because that would be bad. And what I want to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about cryptocurrency, about Bitcoin. Sorry, small man, for those of you at the back, I'm still here. Show you some of the tools that we've developed with Alexi in the Global Program on Money Laundering, with Marco in CrimJust, and really how we can defeat some of the criminal narrative that you can hide on the internet and you can hide with Bitcoin. We will track you, we will find you, and that's what we're about. So, hands up in the room, please, if you have Bitcoin or a virtual currency. A few of you, that's more than I expected. Okay, why? Okay, no. I'll not ask that question. So, for those of you who don't, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, stands for an encrypted currency. There are 2 things you need. You need a wallet to keep it in, and you actually need the coin itself, which doesn't exist, but we'll come back to that. If you look up on the screen, or on this wonderful new touch screen that we've just got, so small man technology, I'm going to fall over it at some point, but go with me on that. You have a wallet ID, which is yours. You don't tell anybody this. It's like having your real wallet, you don't give it to anyone. So if my wife is watching this, I will give it to you, okay? So it's mine. We have the wallet ID, it is secret. That is how you get your money sent to you. But to send it, you need an address. So at the top of the screen, you'll see your wallet ID, lots of letters and some dashes, and then an address at the bottom. And that's public. That's how you physically get your money. You send that address to people who you want to exchange virtual currencies with. A Bitcoin wallet, like I said, has these dashes in between, and then an address doesn't. So again, for hands up in the room, if you are a law enforcement investigator or a prosecutor or a judge. A few. It's okay, you can admit it, it's safe. All right, the camera's this way, not that way. If, for example, you seize a computer, you seize a laptop, you seize a phone, and you get a list of letters and numbers with no dash in the middle, you may well have found a Bitcoin address. Make sense? All right, keep that in the back of your mind. So, what's it worth? This is a remarkably unstable currency. The whole premise of cryptocurrency, of Bitcoin, is that there is no central regulatory body. There's no central bank that's running it. It just exists out there. I took this screenshot. I was in Australia a couple of weeks ago at an online child abuse conference. So, 3rd of May, one Bitcoin was worth $1,470 US. Yesterday, $2,229 US. This morning, $2,600 US. That's a massive change. I can't think of a savings account that would give you a return on your investment like that. But if you think, if you had Bitcoin sitting in your own account a couple of weeks ago, and then you have the same account today, and you haven't touched it, physically you've almost doubled your money. Not a bad deal, yeah? So if you think if you're a criminal, you're a terrorist trying to finance your activity, doing something like this, you may not even need to move your money. It will grow potentially for you. However, like every good investment, it can go down as well. But in the past few weeks and months, you can see the rate that it's gone up, even since February through to the middle of May. We've gone up from around $1,300, now up at $2,526. That's an enormous growth. So the blockchain, again, hands up if you've heard that term, the blockchain. All right, I was going to show it to you here, but it is really quite dull. It's just a load of letters and numbers running down the screen. The premise of the blockchain is that every transaction in virtual currency is publicly visible. Okay? It doesn't have your name linked to it, doesn't have your email address linked to it, but it is publicly visible. And the way that these things work is that everyone should be able to see each other's transactions. Yeah? It's a publicly visible ledger. What's happened where, when, and why. Unsurprisingly, there are advantages in that for criminals, because this is essentially anonymous. At least that's what they're trying to do. We say pseudo-anonymity, because you're not giving your details out there, but there are some techniques that we can do to try and track you on this. I'm not going to go into all of them. Some of them are sensitive for law enforcement officials, and we are putting this out on the internet, so I don't want to give the game away completely. But what I do want to do is help us to challenge that narrative that you can do something in the land of cryptocurrency and get away with it. Yeah? So, the blockchain is where all of these transactions are held. If you go to, for example, blockexplorer.com, it will show you every physical transaction happening second by second, and it's pouring down the screen in front of you. And what you see is a list of those Bitcoin addresses that I showed a couple of moments ago. Long lists of letters and numbers linked to the value that's being moved. So sometimes that value might be really small. You might have only a couple of dollars, a couple of cents being moved. But we see some transactions where there are hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars being moved at any one time. If I go back to this, if you look on the left, the current market cap, the current maximum amount of Bitcoin out there is around $40 billion. Am I right there? Me and maths is never a great thing. It's a lot of money. So there's a lot out there. If you think this is sloshing around on the internet, not real currency. However, to get access to your money, you either have to move it somewhere and cash it out into a real value, or pay someone else or move that around. There are ATM machines, there's I think 25 in Vienna, where you can go in and withdraw Bitcoin as hard euro cash. So again, if you're thinking as a criminal, if you want to bring this stuff out, instead of the old days of money laundering, carrying a big bag of cash perhaps to a foreign exchange and giving it over and hoping that the cops don't see you doing it, what you can do now is turn it into a cryptocurrency, and then you can take that money away perhaps somewhere else. But again, that gives us investigative opportunities as well. So there's two sides to every story on this. Hands up if you heard of the Wannacry ransomware in the past couple of weeks. Almost ask anybody who didn't. No, okay. I had never been on TV in my life before until this happened, so that was a new experience trying to explain what is this thing, what's it about. So Wannacry, encrypted ransomware that was sent around the world very, very quickly a couple of weeks ago. As we currently stand, I think there was around 300,000, and Ruslan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, infected machines around the world, and over 150 countries that have been hit by this. Russian Federation was the highest number of infections on it, but again, it's spread generically around the world. This is how criminals will try and make money. Ransomware encrypts your device, be it your phone, be it your laptop, an entire server. And this exploited a vulnerability in some old software that ideally we shouldn't be using anymore, but still lots of companies, lots of governments still use it. When this is encrypted, you're held to ransom, as the name suggests. And in this case, the criminals doing it were asking for around $300 to decrypt. Now our advice is do not pay. Don't pay because you're dealing with criminals. There is no guarantee that they will unlock your machine if you pay them. This is a criminal transaction. There is a lack of trust. There is no element of that involved. So we advise that you don't pay. Ransomware is preventable. It is preventable by backing up your devices, backing it up maybe into a cloud or a separate hard drive. You can't be held to ransom for something that you have somewhere else. Yeah? So you can prevent your way through this. But these guys are asking for money. They're asking for Bitcoin. If you look at the screen again, this is a screenshot of one of the ransomware, one of the Wannacry encryptions, and you can see the map behind of countries that were affected by it. And you can see Russia was particularly hard hit. On the left of the screen, it says time left 0, and your files will be lost on a specific time. This is the way it works. It is social engineering. It is trying to grip you and say, give us your money or you're not getting your stuff back. And the ransom will typically be aimed at a value that you are likely to pay. You're not going to get ransomware saying, give me $5 million. But they might ask for 300, or they might ask for 75. And that's the criminal business model. It's to try and get money out of you as quick as possible. Make sense? Okay. So, at the bottom of the screen, he said, touching the touch screen, which you shouldn't do. At the bottom is the Bitcoin address. Okay? This is the address that the criminals want the money sent to. So what I'm hopefully going to try and do now is show you what these addresses look like today. The partner that we work with is called Chainalysis. It is the global leader in analysing Bitcoin transactions, following transactions through the blockchain. So what I'm going to try and do is get out of the PowerPoint and go into this. So this is the software that they use. I've loaded some of this already, otherwise it'll take too long for the amount of time that we have. What Chainalysis does, please log in, typically. Well, we got success, look at that. Same thing happens when I try to take money out of the cash point. I think my wife's sitting in the background saying, no. So, if I open up this one, Chainalysis, the way they work, private company, and they gather data from across the internet to try and identify where transactions are coming from, transactions are going to. Criminals make mistakes, which is great for us, and also they have to rely at some point of getting access to their value. So what Chainalysis have done is they've gathered, there were 4 Bitcoin addresses that were sent out with the ransomware. So if it hit your computer, you had this address saying, pay here, send your Bitcoin here, and we'll unlock your key. So, I'll explain all of this in just a tick. So if we go up the top of the screen, or in the middle of the screen, there are 4 addresses. If I bring you back onto the PowerPoint, we see down the bottom of the screen, it says 13 AM something, something, something. Yeah, you see that? Okay. And if we go back into Reactor, you can see if that, trust me, it says 13 AM under the big box there. So under here, that is exactly the same address, okay? When we put it into this software, it gathers all 4 addresses that were linked to this ransomware attack, and it pulls it into one, so it says, here are the 4 addresses where criminal proceeds are being sent to pay for Wannacry. So these are the 4 ways that the criminals can get their money. What we can see here right now on the balance is how much Bitcoin is sitting there at this moment in time. Okay, so this is how much victims have paid. Now there is no guarantee from that payment that they've unlocked, that they've had their machines decrypted. What does it look like in practice? How many people have paid? We can look at the transactions. And if I start going up here, this is all the payments. These are all the hundreds of payments that have been made. And if you look at the graph at the top, you can see over the days that this happened, when people were paying, when it started to tail off. Now, the most fascinating point in this for me is, we're going to look on the screen at the top, or here, it says a balance. So the balance is 51 Bitcoin. Okay? If we think back a couple of weeks ago, 1 Bitcoin was worth around $1,000, give or take, so that was around 50 grand. Today it's worth $2,500, so it's over 100,000. But in broad terms, with the amount of machines that have been infected, they haven't made much money out of this. So the narrative is getting out there. And I think the fact that people like me, law enforcement colleagues, diplomats around the world, got out there saying, we can do something about this, don't pay, that's hitting them, and it's hitting them the way that we should do. If you look at cent, it says 0. Now what we will normally see in a Bitcoin transaction when we look at a wallet is money coming in, money going out. This hasn't moved. Why? They're afraid. Because we're watching. They are sitting there now with 4 Bitcoin wallets with money on it, and they can't do a thing with it. Because they know that we're watching. And for those of you who are watching it on Twitter, if you're one of them, we got you. So, this is what it's about. It's about bringing the fight back to organised criminals, not letting people get away with this. Using public-private sector engagement to grow capability to challenge stuff like this. We can see the victims who are involved in this. It's really quite sad to see this. All on the left-hand side of the screen, these long lists of letters and numbers, those are people who have paid money to try and get their computer decrypted. This is no different to how organised crime worked in the past. In the past, it was a gun to your head saying, give me all the money. Now, it's being done on your computer. But like I said, you can prevent this. Back up your data, use antivirus, anti-malware tools, but be careful about what you click on. If you get an email that you weren't expecting, or it's from something and it doesn't look right and it has an attachment to it, think about it before you open it. Because that's where most of these infections come from. We click on something and bring it into ourselves. Like I said at the start, you cannot be held to ransom for something that you've got backed up somewhere else. Between my program and Alexi's program, the Global Program Against Money Laundering, we were training people around the world, cops and prosecutors, to use this tool and some other really nice stuff to investigate stuff like this. I think, Alexi, since the start of the year, we've got nearly 50 countries, people from 50 countries that we've given this capability to. So really, let's get that message out there that crime does not pay. Even if you're trying to do it online, we have the tools to come after you. And by working with partners like Chainalysis and working with governments, we can do something about this. We're reasonably pushed for time today, so for once in my life, I'm actually going to stop there, and I'll hand it back to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. So we'll have our other 3 speakers give their remarks briefly, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we have, as I mentioned, the 4 programs involved in this collaboration. We have representatives from each of the programs. So now I'm going to turn it over to Alexei Fishenko, who's the head of our global program on money laundering.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm head of global program against money laundering, and as my colleague Neil said, and now yes, it's technology. Okay, so money laundering with bitcoins. I'm in anti-money laundering business already for more than 15 years. And I would say that bitcoins now, it's a very nice, very attractive instrument for money laundering. Why? It's already around. If you want to hide a couple of millions in the internet, it's possible. What you need to do this? Just a computer and internet. This is a scheme of so-called mixer. They exist, they operate. It's just imagine a cloud of several hundreds accounts, and the money are transferred from each account to some others in a matter of minutes, every hour. It's a cloud. As a criminal, what I need to do? I have my money, which are probably proceeds of this ransom attack, or maybe proceeds of drug trade. I throw them into one account, and then I get them out, maybe in a couple of days, with a slight delay, less commission, in several parts. In totally another address, which could not be so easily linked. It's a perfect tool. And the cost will be much less than as a criminal I would pay to a banker. It's here. Also, if you look at drugs trade, now probably at least 1/4 of all drugs are sold over the internet. It's a great business model. To be a middle-level drug dealer, I need just to have, again, internet, Tor browser, Bitcoin wallet, and I need to have access to good postal services. That's it. It's possible to, for one person, maybe with a couple of assistants, to run a drug business worth about several millions per month. It's easy. And all payments are done here with the Bitcoins. It's a new payment instrument. But what law enforcement can do? After probably 10 years of extensive trainings around the world, law enforcement agencies now more or less can investigate financial crimes with a conventional financial system. They know how to get information from the bank. But how many people now in the world know how to investigate Bitcoins? I would say probably me and Neil, we maybe know most of them. And we invite them as an experts to our training. But these people cannot do everything. It's like a new world with a cybercrime, with its streets and squares. And police should be there, should patrol. So who will watch the internet? Who will investigate cryptocurrencies? There is a need for trained police officers. And this is exactly what UNODC is doing. We designed a very short, a very concise, practical training. It takes just 3 days. But in 3 days, any government, any agency will get people who know, who understand how Bitcoins operate, who know who the hell are these miners, wallet keepers, service providers, exchange points, etc. And most important, they know how to get information. Because if you find during the search an address of 30 words, 30 symbols, what you will do with this Bitcoin address? We show them how, where to go, where to look, and how to get information. This training is highly practical. People during the 3 days, they send each other Bitcoins, they open Bitcoin wallets, so now they know how it works. And as Neil showed, they work with a practical tool, they do investigation in a real time. They see how Bitcoins are moving and they are able to track them. And most important, they know how to seize and confiscate them. So, 3 days and you get a number of trained people who can start investigating Bitcoins the next day. This training is supported by e-learning. We also can do it on train-the-trainers basis. So, people who are trained, they can replicate this knowledge around. It has been done. We have piloted it 2 times in 2016, made sure that it is a stable course, it works, and now it has been already delivered twice here in Vienna on a train-the-trainer basis. So now we have trainers who can start already replicate this around the world. Again, this was possible thanks to our donors. Even if you cannot wait for the training, for the live training, most of this material is already in UNODC cryptocurrencies e-learning course. It is available, it has no restrictions, it's for free. It will take, depending on the level of participant, from say couple of hours to maybe maximum 1 day to complete. And after completing this course, they will be ready to get the proper investigation course. You can check it by yourselves, and we have put everything we know in this course. It's easy, and it has been adjusted to the level of law enforcement officers. And this course will be implemented now in the regions, and this will be explained by my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Now I have the pleasure to turn the floor over to Marco Texera, who is the head of our criminal justice along the cocaine project. It's generously funded by the European Union. It's known as CrimJust, is the acronym. We can't work without acronyms here. And I will turn the floor over now to Marco.
So good afternoon, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to be here today, especially to continue the partnership with two colleagues and two global programs. My approach and my brief presentation will focus on the implications of cryptocurrencies for drug trafficking, and particularly it's to my project in terms of programming. It's funded by the European Union, as the director just mentioned, and is implemented in partnership with Interpol and Transparency International. When I was preparing this presentation, I basically went to open sources and I found a news article which I think is important not because of its details and contents, but by our accuracy of the way it's described, but by two main elements. The first element is if we establish 2008 as the starting point of cryptocurrencies and the first consolidated investigation and prosecution in 2017 of drug trafficking using bitcoins, we have a gap of around 10 years. Which means that the state actors and investigative actions took 10 years to consolidate a solid case. This is the first point. The second point that this news article brings to my attention is that, for sure, during these 10 years, criminal networks have been using bitcoins or cryptocurrencies way before the state actors could have basically a consolidated action against them. We try, and I try to do some brainstorming and pick the ideas of Neil and Alexei on the three elements of this connection. The first element that I could find basically is the online marketplace, and according with the World Drug Report, there's an increased purchase of drugs. So there is a demand on online purchase of drugs, and by connection, these purchases are basically paid by cryptocurrencies. In the second element, is basically, we think it facilitates the criminal activities in two dimensions, make it, as Alexei just explained, easier to move profits and revenues, and also might be an alternative way of maximizing profits of criminal networks. But in the side of opportunities, it also brings another aspect. The monitoring and investigation of cryptocurrencies can also be an extra tool for the classic investigation techniques, and that's why I'm glad to partner with my colleagues. I think this sentence also reflects what it's the main takeaway for us. There's clearly a change of business model of narco groups. They are taking advantage of opportunities, they are there, and I think the European Union serious organized crime threat assessment of this year also reflects these opportunities that cryptocurrencies bring to narco groups. From the problematic side, what I think and what we would like to continue to partnership with my colleagues is to bring an extra layer of capacities for investigators and prosecutors to consolidated evidence. Naturally, the investigation of cryptocurrencies and trading delivery will not replace the classic investigation techniques, but will complement them for sure. And the final point also for us is to support the dissemination of knowledge. And I think this is the two takeaways from the programmatic side. that I have from my angle in program implementation itself. So it's a great pleasure to have two other global programs working with us, and we will be glad to partnership with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. So now I have the pleasure, last but not least, I will introduce Nicholas Caruso, who is with our global program on e-learning, which is really innovative part of UNODC that takes a lot of what our experts put together and translates it into computer-based and online-based training. So anyway, I will turn it over to Nicholas, and then we can open the floor for questions. So Nicholas, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm going to give a bit of an overview about the Global Learning Program and anti-money laundering. There we go. Well, the Global Learning Program is a corporate service of UNODC, and its task is to deliver capacity building and training to member states mainly and organizations, and also to the public. They do this through e-learning training, and it's done online, offline, and also through mobile training units. The e-learning program is being chosen day by day by more governments and organizations because why? It's very simple, because it saves a lot of money, time, and also can reach many places that cannot be reached otherwise by live training. By live training, I mean human training. Also, the government, the program is funded by different donors, the UK, the US, Norway, Japan, Australia, and the European Union, of course. We have, as I said, two different types of e-learning delivery. One is online and offline. The online, as you can see, is through our e-learning platform, where you can find the public area, and it's dedicated for public access, so anyone from the public can access any courses that are available there, which are in HIV, anti-corruption and human rights. We have five courses on that. And then we have the restricted area, which is mainly accessible to member officials and organizations. There we have 350 models at the moment, and they're available in 17 different languages. As you can see, we have approximately more than 30,000 users right now in our platforms, and that number is increasing more and more. And it's been increasing a lot in the last couple of years, and it shows how e-learning is increasing more and more all the time. Then we have the offline part, which consists of mobile training units and the e-learning centers. This type of e-learning delivery is delivered to those areas that have no internet access, or the internet access is very low or in bad conditions. And we have 14 mobile training units in 14 different countries, mainly Southeast Asia, but also South Asia and West Africa. And we have eight e-learning centers in it's mainly in Asia countries, as you can see in the screen. Next one. Okay, regarding anti-money laundering, we have currently around 900 users in anti-money laundering courses. And basically, the main region that these users come from is the Southeast Asia region. Why is this important? Because most of the users from this area, the Southeast Asia area, are from the Pacific Islands, and as you know, it's very hard to access those areas by live training. Therefore, that's why e-learning is a very useful tool for those countries. Then you can see how the number of users increasing month. After we have actually 13 courses, models on anti-money laundering crimes. Just to give an example, understanding money laundering, which is the program you can see there, has around 3,000 attempts in our platform, and it's the second most accessed model in the whole platform. So it's a very successful one. Now with the anti-money which came out, we are trying to produce 7 models, and we're going to try to localize in different languages, hopefully in the near future. We're planning that. As Alex said before, we are producing the cryptocurrencies model, so hopefully we'll be online very soon in our platform. I think that's it. Thanks a lot.
So thank you, Nicholas. Great collaboration. We have our cybercrime program looking at the typologies of cybercrime, getting together with our anti-money laundering experts to look at the tracing and also the seizure and confiscation. Then we bring it all together into a training that we put together in online form through our e-learning program, and then we take that product, working with our other programs, particularly the program on CrimJust, and we try to apply them practically in the course of that program to try to support what we're doing under the guise of that program. Really all comes together nicely, and I really want to give another round of applause to everybody, and not only brought to a great presentation, so I'm going to open up the floor now for questions, if anybody has any questions, and if you could please introduce yourself as you ask the question.
Yes, hello, my name is David Rivard from Ellen Ambassadors. And my name is David Rivard from Ellen Ambassadors, and I'm curious if there is any global repository index that tracks banks that remunerate in Bitcoin. Is there anything that exists like that?
As of now, up to my knowledge, most of banks are not at least openly involved in investment of Bitcoins, because one of the major problems is it is not regulated yet. And banks are not allowed yet to invest a lot, to put Bitcoins in their balance sheets, to report it to shareholders, etc., for prudential reasons. But yes, you're right. The question would be that sooner or later it will happen, and then it will be a question of regulation. As of now, the only closest draft regulation is European Union, so-called Fifth Anti-Money Laundering Directive, which will put strict reporting and anti-money laundering obligations on everyone who deals with Bitcoins. But even it is still in a draft.
I think I'd like to add to that, if I may, that some of the challenges that we see are, and the reason that we train prosecutors and judges as well as cops, is that we've seen judicial decisions in the past year where judges have said Bitcoin and virtual currencies can't be used for money laundering. I suggest they can.
Thank you. My name is Koji Takashi. I'm a visiting scholar to the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. I've been doing research on civil law, commercial law aspects of Bitcoin and blockchain. And I have a question regarding jurisdiction in criminal law investigation, especially jurisdiction to seize Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency units as proceeds of crime. As you know, blockchain is borderless, and there is no possibility of localize particular Bitcoin address to particular countries. Are there any rules or principles which determine jurisdiction to seize cryptocurrency aspects in view of this situation?
Thank you for the question. I'm rapidly thinking of the answer. I don't think there's any specific regulation or guidance for the moment. Where we do see Bitcoin getting seized as a proceed of crime, it's in jurisdictions that have made that decision that it is fundamentally still a financial instrument. And the way they tend to seize it, I think the Netherlands comes to mind, is that they can physically cash that value out into a hard currency, and then they seize the hard currency. So it's not necessarily trying to control a wallet or a Bitcoin address. They actually withdraw that into hard cash and then retain it from there. But I think it almost links back to the last question. There is a lack of regulation here. There is a real need for research, a real need for, I think, the sort of leadership that we can get involved in trying to gather more information about this, because in many ways we're lucky that this hasn't reached I think a real critical mass of criminality yet, but it's coming. It's one of those rare occasions where we are a little bit ahead, and the more that we can take advantage of it, the better. I realise that may not have answered your question.
Thank you very much. My name is William from Tanzania. I just want to know the difference between the Hawala system and the Bitcoin. Are there any relationships?
Well, the answer is very simple. All of this is just, they are just systems for transferring money. The difference is just in technologies. Modern, I would say, there is no much difference between, in principle, between Hawala and modern correspondent banking. The difference is in technology. Bitcoin is just a next step, but there are still people behind.
Thank you very much. Ruslan Yusuf of Group IB, a cybersecurity company. Thank you very much for these great presentations. So, speaking about those 4 wallets on Wannacry, so everybody's watching them, obviously, and we are waiting when the cash will move and we'll grab them. But there are many hundreds and thousands other wallets that are not tracked or do not get that much attention. And cyberspace is a very complex thing. It's global, it's transnational, it needs cooperation. But blockchain within this complex cyberspace, some rocket science, it is too complicated. What efforts does it require on the international scale to investigate these complex crimes effectively?
Thank you. It's a really good question, and a really good point. I think the key thing to take away from all of this, when it, especially the more complex it gets, is that it comes down to our relationships. The ability to grow relationships internationally between investigators, between individual states, irrespective of perspective, and get people who want to make a difference and want to do their best to try and prevent organised criminals from exploiting people around the world. I think what we see from this specifically, from looking at cryptocurrency investigation, is that this needs to become a normal part of the armoury of investigators and prosecutors around the world. It often causes me some concern when I see specialist cybercrime units getting tasked with, I don't know, downloading a phone or looking at a fraud that perhaps is too basic for them. We know we have a very limited pool of expertise around the world. So across our programs, we grow the capability of first-line responders, first-line investigators and prosecutors, so they can gather some of this evidence, and that they shouldn't be put off by the concept of, okay, there's a Bitcoin or some sort of altcoin, we can't do anything with it. So the onus is on people like us to grow that policy discussion and to deliver the capacity building training. I think on companies like you within Group IB, you have leadership and expertise in cybersecurity around the world. You can help business protect itself, and you can help broaden that public discourse. And I think everything that we can do to broaden public awareness to help people protect themselves has to be a good thing.
One more very important thing. It's possible, and UNODC is doing what we can to grow capacities of law enforcement agencies. It's possible to get a critical mass of law enforcement people who will be able to investigate. But the second problem is regulation, and Bitcoin has a very significant balloon effect. It's enough to have one single jurisdiction, no matter how large is it, which will allow, say, uncontrolled Bitcoin exchange, which will be not cooperative. This will be enough to put all global efforts to combat Bitcoin money laundering to zero effect, because everything will be immediately channeled through one non-cooperative Bitcoin exchange. This will be enough. So here, really, we need a global legal instrument and uniform level legal playground.
Thank you very much, Jean Clémailleux, Director Policy Analysis, UNODC. To my colleagues, we know that the critical mass in law enforcement, in our judicial system has come under severe strains with the austerity, with the other public spending reductions which we have witnessed over recent years. And we know that this evolution is going extremely rapid, so it seems to be automatically a conclusion that we need to work closer with the private sector. But evidently, not everybody in the private sector is necessarily well intended. I mean, how can we ensure that we have an adequate framework where we can rely on the private sector in a manner which benefits indeed the society as a whole? Thank you.
I think Bitcoin is probably the rare example where a private sector is even a bit ahead of governments, and private sector is really interested to have proper regulation in place. Because now, I would say just lack of regulation, it stops really huge inflow of investments. So now we have seen that in certain countries, private sector started to self-organize, trying to produce their own regulations and promoting these regulations to the governments. Our training course, it has been created in a close cooperation with private sector experts. We use the investigation tool has been created by private sector experts because private companies, exchanges, they need to know in the first instance who are their clients, with whom they deal, otherwise their business will disappear. So Bitcoin is probably one of the best examples of private-public cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Pius Otte, the Federal Ministry of Justice, Nigeria. I just want to share a perspective in light of the question that was asked about jurisdictional issues, and to just share a recent experience we had in Nigeria. We had this trader who obviously was collecting money from persons for the purpose of buying Bitcoins, excess of $3 million. And the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission thought, and these monies were deposited in a regular bank account, but from there, of course, he was doing his transactions. And the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission thought these transactions were suspicious, and so what they did was to move against the physical deposit in that account, and then more or less put the burden on him to prove that the transactions that were being conducted, purchase of Bitcoins on behalf of clients, were not of a criminal nature. Of course, Nigeria doesn't have regulations yet to regulating Bitcoin's use or exchange, but we thought in the interim this was an effective way of at least putting a stop to that particular transaction by moving against the physical cash that was being used for this. I just thought to show that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a really, really good point, because I think it proves the point that irrespective of how they move transactions electronically, we still need to be able to come in at that moment of cashing in or cashing out, and that through our pre-existing suspicious activity reporting regimes, that side of things, we're actually in a pretty strong space to do that.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to all the presenters for the interesting work and training on Bitcoin. I think it's important to remember that there's nothing illegal about Bitcoin as such. For most people, or many people, let's say, Bitcoin is simply a new way to buy and sell items and to transfer particular value. I don't think it's a currency as such. It looks more like a commodity to me, but economists can discuss that as to whether it's a true currency. And on the question of regulation, because it is useful for non-criminal activity. I think there's a good question as to what regulation we're talking about. Is it financial regulation, which is done domestically, or is it some sort of international regulation by which every country now obligates itself to regulate a particular financial product in a given way? The problem for us as law enforcement, and I am a prosecutor, is that there will always be off-the-books people that will work with off-the-books Bitcoin exchanges for criminal purposes. We have quite a bit of banking regulation right now, but still money is transferred, real money, US dollars or whatever you might have, euros, can still be transferred for criminal purposes and money laundering purposes. So I don't think it's necessarily the lack of regulation that has encouraged criminal use of Bitcoin. It is one, some of the anonymity in associating a particular wallet with an individual, and from my perspective, that's what counts, the attribution of someone who owns that wallet. And the fact that there are still off-the-books exchangers that will accommodate people who don't want to be known. There are ways to get around it, there are ways to investigate it, which I expect that UNODC also trains on, that they may not want to broadcast on Facebook. But my bottom line point is that in terms of international regulation, if you think of it as just another financial transaction, that generally isn't regulated on a global basis using an instrument. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to vacate the room because we have other events coming in. So I'm going to have to end it here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our speakers today. I would like to, and as we leave, thank people from Public Affairs, particularly Diana and Ezra, Colleen from GPML, and Muge and Caitlin from CrimJust for helping not only put this together, but to get us on Facebook Live. Thanks so much, everybody.